Hey everyone, welcome back for another AWS in real life video. Today we're going to be working through a scenario called the IAM Security Audit Report. Without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so in these videos we like to work through a scenario. And in this case, here's our scenario. So, you're a developer at AIRL Incorporated, and your company has recently undergone a third-party security audit of your AWS account. When your security officer got the results of the audit, they were shocked at how many security issues involving IAM users came up. After looking through the audit report, you noticed that there are a few users flagged as inactive who still had access. However, they do not work with you any longer at your company. You also notice most IAM users do not have MFA or multi-factor authentication enabled for their login. And of the users that have keys, almost no one has rotated them in a reasonable amount of time. Your security officer has asked you to come up with a solution to this problem. Alright, so the goal of this video, or the goal working through this scenario, is to use the IAM credentials report with Lambda, AWS Lambda, to perform a security audit of your AWS environment and to email that to your security officer. So the technologies we're going to be using within AWS, we're going to be using IAM, and in IAM we're going to use the credentials report, custom policies, custom roles, Lambda, the command line interface, very little for profiles, CloudWatch, both logs and events, new service that you probably haven't seen yet, which is a simple email service, new in terms of it's not covered, at least to my knowledge, in any of the certifications exams or anything else, but it's another service provided by AWS. And Boto 3, which is the Python SDK for AWS, and also Python 3. Alright, so the steps. First, let's download the resources from our GitHub repo. So, we have a GitHub repo out there, and here in the new folder for the IAM Security Audit Report, we have 5 files, and we're going to work through these, but you will need these files to work through this scenario. Alright, so I already have them downloaded, and I have them here. So, download resources. Great, we have the resources. Now, let's download and review the IAM credentials report in the console. So many of you may not be familiar with what I'm talking about this IAM credentials report. So we're going to go into IAM and we're going to take a look. So over here in IAM, if you look on the left hand side, there is a link for the credentials report. Go ahead and click on that, and then you have a button for download report. Download the report. And it'll take a minute. And let's open that report. Takes a second to open. What this is it's a CSV file that provides us with a lot of information about our IAM users within our account. Alright, so let's expand these. Alright, now I'm working in a training account, so I don't have a lot of users. But here, this is to give you an idea of some of the fields or some of the information that you can get from this credential report, which it's very rich in the information you get. Most of the report that we're going to be creating is from this report directly. The only thing that's a little different is the password policies, and we'll cover that in a minute. Alright, so in this report, we have information like when was the user created. Do they have passwords enabled? So if they do, this would provide console access, and if not, then they do not have console access. When was their password last used? When was their password last changed? When's the next rotation? Do they have MFA active? So multi-factor when they log in, is that active? Do they have keys? So is key 1 active? If it is, when was it last rotated? When was it last used? In what region was it last used? and with what service was it last used. And they do this for key 2 as well, because you could have 2 keys per user in AWS for IAM users. And then there's also information about certs. I don't cover that in this video, but please feel free to get hands-on with that as well. For the scope of the video today, we're going to be looking at MFA enabled, inactive users, inactive keys, and password rotation and key rotation. All right, so this CSV file is what we are going to be getting our information from. Now, I know that there's not a lot of users in this file, but one thing I want to point out here, and this is kind of why we're writing our own report for this, is this is just raw data. There's no filtering on this. There's no, it's not broken down in any certain way. This is just the raw data about your users in IAM. And what we want to do is we want to use this data and use it in a targeted manner to check based on rules that we establish for our environment. And we're going to get further in depth with this. So, all right, that was our credentials report. We have reviewed the credentials report. Okay, so the first real kind of hands-on thing we're going to do is we're going to hop over to SES, and we're going to verify an email account that we're going to use as the quote-unquote sender email. So let's hop over to SES, simple email service. All right, so if you have not used SES before, your account is in like a sandbox mode, which means that if you want to send or receive emails using SES, you need to verify an email account. So over here on the left-hand panel, click on email addresses. All right, currently we do not have any verified email addresses. So we're going to click up here and we're going to verify a new email address. And we are going to put in our email address to verify. All right, I put it in there, and now I'm going to click verify. And what it's going to say is, please go to your email inbox and check that. So I have my email inbox here. I'm going to click into my link that I got, and I'm going to get a URL, and it says, please verify by clicking this link. I'm going to click the link. It tells me, congratulations, my email has been verified. And now if we come and refresh this page, now we see over here the status is verified. All right, so that's as simple as it is to get your email verified. It's a pretty painless process. All right, so we have verified our email account that we're going to use as the sender. Now in this video, we're actually going to be using the same sender email and as our recipient email. So I'm not going to verify 2 different email accounts. And this works because the sender and the receiver are the same and they're both verified. So, all right, we verified that. Let's send a test email to our inbox from this. So now we can click here on our little box. We can say send a test email. Let's say I'm going to send to the same account. Hello AIRL and hello there, whatever, doesn't matter. We're going to send our email, and then we are going to cycle back over to our inbox. And we can see here now, obviously, because it sees the sender as myself and the recipient as myself, it says it's from me. Let's click in here. We can see that our subject is the subject that we put in, and the message, just a real simple test email, but our test with SES has worked. So we know that it is properly sending to our email addresses. All right, so we've sent our test email. Okay, so next we're going to review the provided HTML email template. So let's talk about this before we jump over into this. The method that we are going to do, or to provide a report to our security officer, is actually going to be an HTML email. So there's a lot of data in that file that we saw, that CSV file. And we could have used SNS, but SNS only allows us to send text in an email. No formatting, no advanced formatting. I mean, we could use tabs and spaces, and we could try to make the information useful like that, or we could send along a JSON string. But what we really want to do is we want to make it as easy and nice for our security officer or whomever is going to receive this report to view the information. And a great way to do that is through an HTML template or an HTML email. We'll take a look at what this looks like later, but I've provided you with a template in the GitHub repo that we're going to be using, we're going to be uploading. So let's take a look at that and let's see what it's doing. All right, so we're going to come back over here and we've got our email template right here. So I actually have this up. Email template. Okay, so this is our HTML email template. Now let's take a look at what it actually looks like in the browser. Okay, so what we have done is we have created a HTML template that is rendered pretty consistently across email clients. The functionality that you can expect within an email client for HTML support is a lot more restricted than you can for web browsers. And so we wrote a template that should, kind of the lowest common denominator, where we expect it will work across most email clients. Now in this report, we're going to generate, we see these double curly brackets. These are placeholders in our template. And let's take a look at what that looks like in the code. All right, so we had date, and we have this double curly bracket here. Now, we're going to be uploading this template to SES, and there's a section for HTML templates because SES supports the sending of HTML emails. And what we can do is we can put placeholders in our HTML template that we want to drop data into later. So this template will remain the same, but the data in which we drop into the placeholders can be different each time we send it. So we don't have to send the whole HTML file. We're going to, in Lambda, generate the pieces we need, and then we're going to drop them into the template, and then once it's completed and filled out, it's going to be emailed to our recipient. All right, so we have the placeholders in different areas, and the sections that we're going to be looking at is access levels. So this is so it will list all the users for your AWS account minus root. I'm excluding root account in this because root account really should be its own thing and managed by the owner of that account. So this will be IAM users only. But this access levels will list all users and then tell or show if they have console access, if they have a key 1 active or a key 2 active. And we saw this information in that CSV file. Next is password policies. So let's take a look at our password policies. IAM. So password policies are policies you can put on your account requiring, nope, sorry, not that one. Account settings. All right, so here's our password policies. And this is, does my account require at least one uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols? Should we allow passwords to expire? If so, how long? How many times or how many reuses should we track? So sometimes you might find where you may try to change your password back to one that you had previously, and it'll tell you no, it has to be 2 or more new ones since that. We can set the same kind of policy up. And in here in the report, we're actually going to populate that data there. So in this case, we saw the minimum password length, and we have our placeholder here, and I would expect to see 6. So our minimum password length, based on our password policy, is 6 characters. So this is that information, and we're adding this here just so that it's on hand for your security officer or whoever receives this report, so that if they ask a user to change their password, they have the information at their fingertips that they may need to help them, if they have any questions about it. Rule thresholds. So we are going to be looking at 5 different rules that we've established that we want to check. The first rule is MFA enabled on an account? True or false? A good value would, if we're doing the check for this, there's a flag in the code that will disable this test or this rule to be run if we wanted. But in this case, we're going to run this rule. And we're looking at it and saying we have a placeholder, but it's good if it is true and it's in violation if it's false. So our rule thresholds here, pretty much you have 3 thresholds. Good, which is going to be anything that is less than the lower bound of our warning, and anything in violation is going to be anything greater than our high bound of warning. So there's it really boils down to a less than, a between, and a greater than, and these values are going to be what we use to evaluate these rules. So an example might be an inactive user. If a user has been inactive for less than 30 days, let's say, so the lower bound will be 30 for the warning, and the upper bound may be 60. So if a user's been inactive for less than 30 days, then they're good. If it's been between 30 to 60 days, then there's a warning, and this might say you may want to evaluate if this user really needs console access. And then finally, after 60 days, it'll be a violation stating you need to do something about this. So this will get populated with the values that we will provide, and we'll get to more of that later. And then here are the rules. And now these are just empty tables right now, and what we're going to do is we're going to be running and parsing out that CSV file and running those rule values, or running those values to check if each user and where they stand as it applies to these rules. So these placeholders here, we're actually going to be generating rows that will get dropped into the table for each of these. So let's go back to our code. We can see here, this is for our access levels, our password policies. These are just rows. Everything's nested within tables because that is how the HTML emails are best structured. But I encourage you guys to look through this, get hands-on with this template, learn about it, tweak it if you want, add new to it. This is just to get you an idea and kind of hands-on with what you can do and what is possible with these services and how they might meet your needs. So please take a look through this, tweak it, mess with it, do what you want with it. All right, so we have reviewed the HTML email template, and the next step is we need to upload the HTML template to SES, and we're going to use a utility that I'm providing you guys called the SES HTML Template Manager. All right, so why did I write a separate utility for this? Well, let's take a look. Here, let's close that. Let's hop over to SES and let's upload our template. Over here on the left-hand side, we can see email templates. And there's very little here. So, it says you can use templates to send personalized emails to your customers. To create a template, use the Create Template API operation. So, the reason that I'm providing you with a utility is because the console actually doesn't have the functionality to upload, view, and modify templates. So instead of walking you through all of the commands, I thought it might be good to provide this utility for you yet again, look through the code, mess with it. It's good stuff. It's good to understand what's going on under the hood, and we're going to take a look at it real quick. I'm providing you just with a simple menu, and what this will allow you to do is create new HTML templates in SES, list existing ones, get a current one, update a current one, or delete one. And I've got the logic in here that will handle that. So let's run this in our command line. So Python. Also, if you don't have Python, please install Python 3. I'm using Python 3 for this. Please install Python to your local machine if you're going to use this utility. Otherwise, you can use the CLI, but the CLI was a little bit more of a pain in the butt to do. So I used Bodo to do this. So let's launch this application. Now we're going to launch the SES HTML template manager. And here we are. We are presented with this menu. Now first what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my region because we are working in a specific region for this. In this case, we're in Virginia. So this is US East 1. So let's change region, which is option 6, and I'm going to say US East 1. And you see up here my region's changed. Now, if you have used the command line interface on your local machine before, you will have what is called profiles on your machine. So this is the way in which you can use the command line or SDKs on your local machine with your access keys. I can provide a link, or I'll look for a link of how to do this. I'm not going to cover how to add your profiles. I'm going to assume that you have a profile already loaded to your account. So please check the description for a link of how to set these up if you haven't already. But this is with a working knowledge or a working understanding that you have a profile already set up on your machine. So I'm going to change my profile name, and this is my local profile name, and I have added a profile to my local machine for my user. Alright, now we're here. I have my profile name. So let's see if there's any existing templates right now on SES, which we already know there's not because we can see it here. Let me refresh. Alright, alright, so I got nothing here. So there are no templates currently uploaded. But what we want to do is we want to upload a template. So let's say option 1 for create a new template. Now what do we want this template name to be? This template name, we want it to be, and I've written this down so that I have it for sanity's sake. We're going to use the name AIRL Security Audit HTML Template. Email subject. So this is what will show up in the subject line for when you get the email. And we're going to call this the IAM Security Audit Report. Text. So if your client's browser or their email client does not support HTML emails, they'll get the text section. In this case, I know that my clients will support HTML emails, so I'm going to leave this blank for now. And then what is a local path for my HTML template? So this will go in, it'll actually read in the template, and then it will upload it through the Bodo 3 library to SES for you. And in my case, I gotta get my window over here. That is not the right one. I want to upload this, so I'm going to copy my path. And I'm going to upload my file. Alright, template's been created. So let's see if that worked. Option 2, we're going to list them. And right here we can see the AIRL Security Template Audit. Let's take a look in the console to see if that actually got uploaded. Here we go. And refresh. And here we go. here is our HTML template. This is the one that we were just looking at. So maybe when we want to see what's actually in this template, did it actually get uploaded properly? Let's use that utility and let's get that template. So we know that this is our name. I'm going to copy that, and then we're going to say get existing template, and I'm going to provide the name and an output path. So this is where do I want to write my file to, because it will download that HTML file and write it to your local machine. So let's grab the same path and let's call it current template.html. All right, download's been complete. We can see it here in our local file. Let's open it just for sanity's sake. And that's what we're looking for. That is the template that we uploaded. So we have successfully uploaded our template to SES. All right. Upload our template with the manager. Yep. And feel free to play with the template manager. There is some examples of how to make Bodo 3 calls, so Python calls, into AWS, and they may even be good examples for you to do your own work with the SDKs. So feel free to use those. All right, so the next thing we want to do is to create a custom IAM policy. We're actually going to create 2. These are going to be used for our Lambda role. In this case, the first one we're going to do is an IAM one that will give us access to generate the credential file and get the password policy information. All right, so we're going to hop back over. And let's go to IAM, create a custom policy. All right, so policies, we're going to create a policy. Now this time we're going to use the policy generator because this is a pretty simple policy we're going to be writing. So the service, we are looking for IAM. Actions, what do we want to do? Let's take a look at what's under write. We wanted to get the, so maybe it's under read. Let's take a look at read. Generate credentials report, that looks like one that we wanted. Get credentials report, that's another. And get account password policy. Great. Those are the 3 things that we're going to need for this, because you need to be able to generate the report. That's what we did when we clicked on the button. Then you get the report, which is the download of it. And then also we need to be able to access our password policy information so we can populate that table we had on the template. So let's review our policy. It's got our IAM roles. Let's take a look. Here's the 3 that we have applied. Let's give it a name. In this case, I'm going to call it policy IAM account info. Create our policy. All right, there's our first policy. The next one we're going to want to create is for SES. So let's come in here and type in SES. And we need to be able, our Lambda needs to be able to send or trigger SES to send a templated email. So we need to look for the command of send templated email. And here we go. This is the call that Lambda is going to need to have permissions to make for SES. And that's it for SES. And we're going to give it a policy name. We're going to call it AIRL policy SES send email and create our policy. Great. All right, so we've just now created our 2 custom policies, our IAM one and our SES one. And next we need to create a role for our Lambda function. So we are going to come over to roles and we're going to create a role. And this is going to be for Lambda right here. Permissions. All right, so we want to attach the 2 policies that we just created, which are right here, the IAM and the SES, And also we need to attach one more, which is a managed policy by AWS, and it is the AWS Lambda Basic Execution Role. So this will give it the ability to execute a Lambda and write logs to CloudWatch. So let's add the AWS Lambda Basic, AWS Lambda Basic Execution Role here. All right, let's review it. It has our IAM policy, it has our SES policy, and it has our Lambda execution role. All right, let's give it a name. Role Lambda Security Audit. Create a role. All right, we have our role for our Lambda. Let's check these off the list. So we've created our role, we attached our IAM custom policy, our SES policy, and our Lambda execution role. All right, next we're going to review the Lambda program. So let's take a step back real quick and let's talk about Lambda for just a brief moment. Lambda, AWS Lambda, is a serverless compute service. So what does that mean? It means that we can run small bits, small pieces of code in AWS without having to spin up the servers and the infrastructure to do that. So in this case, we have a small piece of code. In this case, it's a Python application. It's right here. That we want to run and then shut down. So we don't want to have to pay for EC2 instances. We don't want to have to worry about complex infrastructure of spin it up, run this, tear down the instances, pay for the instances. Lambda is a great tool that AWS provides, and I highly recommend you get hands-on with this. But it supports different languages like Python and Node and Go and C# and Java. If you have small, short-running tasks like under 5 minutes, Lambda could be a great tool for you. In this case, we're going to use this to parse that credentials file. We're going to put it into models. We're going to run each user against the rules that we have. We're going to generate the data for the rows that we're going to drop into the SES template. And then we're going to send that email to the security officer or to the recipient. Okay, so let's take a look at the Python code that we're going to have do this. We have our import statements here, and I understand that not all of you may have Python experience. I chose to use Python in this. Python's a pretty easy language to pick up and run with. However, you're not going to be required to do any Python scripting or in this lab. I just want to run you through the code so that you understand what this is doing. Okay, so up here we have a flag that we're going to use. This is tied to environment variables within Lambda. So we are going to be adding environment variables in Lambda to provide our threshold values and flag values for running different rules. This is for us to be able to easily manage where those are at. That way you don't have to modify the code in order to make changes to your Lambda application. So here's one of those flags, and I'm using this os.environ call, and this will go into my environment variables, look for this environment variable, and populate the content of that environment variable for that variable. Up here I have some constants I'm using, and these are going to color the cells depending on what the rule outcome is. So an example might be if a user does have MFA enabled on their account, and that's what we're looking for, then the cell will show up green and it will say good. If there's a warning, it'll do yellow with a warning, and if it's red, it'll show red with a violation. We saw this in the template earlier. Okay, so here are different environment variables, and these are the thresholds that we're using for our rules. So we're saying here, do we want to run the MFA check? Yes or no. So it's a Boolean. I actually also have these in your list here with explanations. So check MFA with a flag to see if we want to run the check for active MFA. Inactive user low. This is the low threshold for days or in days for inactive users. So if a user has been inactive for less than the low, then they're good. Same for high, but for violations, we're going to be looking at password age. So how long ago did they rotate their password? How long ago was their key used? And then how long ago was their key rotated? And then your upper and lower bounds for all of these. Then we will have a recipient email address, and this is who we're going to send the email to. Our source email, this is the one that we just verified and ran our sample against. Our template name, this is the template that we uploaded to SES, and then the region that the SES template exists in. Okay, so that covers those. The other environment variables are further down. Here we've established models that we're going to parse that CSV file into. We have some helper functions that we're using. If there is a provided profile name or region name, we're going to create a session for the Python SDK library, Bodo. We're going to create the proper type of session based on that information. We're going to convert date times, or attempt to convert date times, so strings to date times. And if they don't convert, because the file in a lot of places, if there's no value, says NA, we're assigning that as a none. All right, so we have a call here. This will go to the IAM service, and it will generate the credential report. Then it will wait for 5 seconds because it takes a minute for AWS to populate that or to generate that report. So we're going to wait for 5 seconds, and then we're going to get that report. We're going to decode its content, and we're going to return that for use later down the road. We're going to do the same kind of thing to get the account password policies. And now where we did up here, we got the report and then we got its content. Here's where we're going to parse it out into models. So we're going to skip the header row because there was a header row in that CSV file, and we're going to skip the root account. And then for each of the records in there, we're going to split on the comma because it's a CSV file, and we're going to parse the content out to its respective model. And then we're going to return that list of users, which is now the parsed CSV file data. There's a little helper utility to calculate how many days it's been since an event happened, and then our rules. So with our rules, we're going to get a formatted date. That's just a helper function. First one, though, is generate access level rows. So this was that top table in which we wanted to see what kind of access or in what ways could a user access their AWS account. This is going to populate that table. There's no threshold for this because all users get run through this. This is the MFA check. We here check if you want to run this check, this will be true or false. If it's false, then it won't even run this check. And if you wanted to display only issue records, so any records that were warnings or violations, and skip, so don't write the good records, this will check that, and based on what you've set, will either write the good records or not. Generate inactive user rows. This is where we're getting into the rule checks. We're going to look in here and we're going to check if the days since a user's last used their password, is it within the bounds of our threshold? So is it in a good status, or is it between the low and the high, or is it outside of the high? And we're going to populate the values in our template here based on that check. And then we are going to, this row here, we're going to add it to a list, and then we're going to join the whole list together, which is going to look like this, where it's going to be a row and with cells, and that's going to be all generated in a list. that we are going to be sending, and this is what's going to populate that placeholder in our HTML template. And we have the same for our password rotation, inactive keys, except we loop through the keys under each user in this case. Our key rotation, same thing. And then we have our email section. Generate the email template data. So when we send, or when we make that call, and let's take a look down here so we know the call we're making. The send templated email call. There are pieces of data that call needs to know in order to send this HTML email out. It needs to know the recipient address. In this case, I've restricted it just down to one, but you can have several. The source email, the template name, and then here's the call that we're making, and we're populating the values here. Now there's this template data section, and this is where we pass in all of those values that we wish to plug into those placeholders. And so it's a JSON document or a JSON object that we're going to pass in during this call. And in this section, that's what we're doing, is we're going out and we're getting the date based on that date formatted helper function, and we're getting the rows for the access levels. So this is the list that we get of those HTML rows. Here, this is the password policies, and we have placeholders in our HTML template that we're going to be populating with the information that we got from that call. MFA checks, this is right here, this is going to put the values into our thresholds table. And then down here, this is where our rules, the results of our rules will be generated and populated. So that we just looked at these, and this is those lists of rows. These are what's going to be populated into these sections. So in here, this is, we're saying here's the placeholder in our template, our HTML template, and here's the values that we want to plug into that. And then we're going to turn it into a JSON string, and we're going to add that to our call, and then we're going to send this to SES. SES will populate the template with the values we've provided. It will take the source email as the source, the sender. It will send it to the recipients for the template that we've specified. All right, and here's just the steps. So it goes through, gets the credentials report, parses it, runs the rules, creates an email object, builds out the template data, and then sends that template request with the template data to SES to email out. So I know that's a lot of information, but I wanted to make sure that you guys do understand what this is actually doing, since we're not coding this live. All right, so we did that already. Review the program. Now we need to create our Lambda function and copy that code over. Okay, so let's go over and go to Lambda. We're going to create a function. We're going to author it from scratch. In this case, we need to give it a name, and I'm going to call mine the AIRL security audit. This is going to be in Python 3, and this is where we're going to choose the role that we created. So choose an existing role, and we did the AIRL role, and create. And it's going to take a second. There we go. Okay, so we now have a blank Lambda. And we're going to copy our code over into this. So let's copy, and you can upload the file as well if you wanted. I'm just going to copy. One thing I want to point out here that's important is you see where it says Lambda Handler here, and then the handler info. So this Lambda Handler, this is like calling it the main function. When the Lambda is triggered, it's going to look for this function first. And it's pretty much, like I said, our main function. I just wanted to make sure that you understood that if you didn't already know that. All right, one thing also I forgot to mention earlier is that Lambdas work on the premise of triggers. So these are bits of runnable code in the cloud, but we need a way to invoke them. And if we look over here on the left-hand side, we have a bunch of triggers. So let's take a look at our list again. We've copied our data. Okay, our environment variables. Let's do that first. So let's add our environment variables to our Lambda. Now in the code, we already have the reading of the variables in place. So let's add them down here. Now if we look here, see this section for environment variables? This is where we're going to put that information in. And I want to do this. So I'm going to copy, I have them all written in here. I want to display actionable only, true. Let's do that as false. So that will show our good, warning, and violation records. Check MFA. That's the next one we're going to do. That's true. I want to check that each user has MFA enabled on their account. Inactive user low. I want to assign this to be 60 days. So if a user's been active in less than 60 days, they're good. If it's between 60 or the high of 90, then it's a warning. And if they have been inactive for longer than 90 days, it's going to be considered a violation. We're going to do the same for the password age, but we're going to say 80 days. So if it's been less than 80 days since you've rotated, that's fine. You're in the good. You're considered good based on the rules. Our password high, let's do that as 90. So it gives you 10 days of warning that you need to change your password. We're going to do this for inactive keys. And we're going to say this is 60 days with an upper bound of 90 days. Our key age, this is the key rotation policies. And we're going to do the same as our password, and that's going to be 80 and a high of 90. Our recipient email, so this is, take out a space, this is who is going to receive this email. The source, this is who's sending the email. In this case, we're going to use the same email because we only verified one. The template name, so this is the template that we uploaded. And let's actually go back and let's check. What did we call it again? I may have forgotten. It's right here. All right, so I just did the option 2, which was list existing templates in that tool. And I got the name, and I'm going to paste it right there. Template name, and finally the region, so the SES region. This is what region did we have our stuff, our template in, so US East 1. And that is our environment variables. And that's a lot of them. I know, let's make sure we save this now. So we have our code uploaded, we have our environment variables now populated, and we want to, let's take a look at our list now. We created our environment variables, and now we need to add a trigger. So what I was saying a little bit earlier was that Lambdas work on the premise of triggers. We need something that's going to invoke this code. And in this case, we want to use a cron job. And we're going to use, CloudWatch Events. So we want to invoke, we want this report to run on a certain time frame. So let's take a look. Let's create a new rule. So we've picked CloudWatch Events from this left-hand triggers section. Rule name, and I'm going to call this the Lambda cron test. Rule description. Since we're testing this, I want to say send report every minute. So this means that I should be getting an email every minute with this report. I'm going to do, now if you look down here, here's some examples. You can write complex ones here, and I will leave that to you guys. There's information online of how to write crons. So you might want one that says, send me this report at noon every Monday. And this is all in UTC time. So you might be saying, I want this report sent to me every Monday at noon UTC time. In this case, though, I'm going to use a rate, which is a simpler expression, and I'm saying I want this every minute. And then let's not enable it just yet. Let's add it. Okay, and then let's save our function. Now, if we look over here, so here's our Lambda. I'm going to click over here. Here's our CloudWatch logs. This is where our Lambda will be logging to. This is the permissions for SES. This is the permissions for IAM. But we click here, and this is our event. And this is now our event, and it's a rate of every 1 minute. So let's take a look at our list. All right, so we've created our trigger and our cron trigger, and now we need to test it. So let's come in here, and let's enable and save. So what this is saying is every minute I should be receiving an email with this report fully populated. And I'm going to be watching my inbox, but let's take a look at our CloudWatch logs. So over here we have monitoring section, and this is information about the Lambda. So has it invoked at all? Has this been called? Currently we have a count of 0. How long was the duration in milliseconds? Were there any errors? Were they throttled? And you can get that if there's a lot of Lambdas running at one time. And just different information. So let's refresh this. Okay, nothing yet. But we can keep an eye on the Lambda based on, and there we go. Okay, so it says that it fired once. It says we have an error, however. So let's jump to our logs and find out what our error was. Takes a minute to load. Okay, so it's telling me that the task timed out after 3 seconds. Now that's true. I would expect that because we have a wait timer of 5 seconds. So if we have our Lambda timed at 3 seconds, then it's never going to be able to complete. So let's come over here and let's take a look at some of the other attributes. And right here is our culprit. We have our timeout set for 3 seconds, but we have a wait timer of 5 seconds. How about we set this to 30 seconds now? And we're going to save that. Now, this should handle, and it's been saved, we can see that here. This should now handle that wait time plus the time it takes to run the rules. So let's go to our monitoring. It says it's been called 3 times, but it says there's 3 errors, and that's because we just changed it. So that means that it's fired 3 times. And I'm also keeping an eye on my inbox to see if I get an email, but I'm waiting to see this to go up to 4. So we've addressed our timeout issue. Our environment variable should be passing in the data that we need, so it should be saying where it's running or where it's sending this content to. Let's refresh. We're going to keep an eye on this. It's every minute, so I don't want to jump around a whole lot until we... Okay, there we go. So there's a 4. And let's take a look. It says that we still have an error. So let's jump back to our CloudWatch logs. All right. So we have an issue. All right. I'm going to take a look into this issue, and I will return back once it's completed. Okay, and we're back. So, I had miscounted for the fact that when you put in environment variables, the trues and falses and these are seen as strings. So that's been fixed, and I've uploaded the template for you guys, or I've uploaded the changes to the GitHub so you won't hit the same issues, something that I had overlooked. But let's take a look at what this report now looks like. And here it is. This is the final product that we get from this Lambda audit program. So we can see in here our users. Now, like I said, I'm running in a training account, so I don't really have a whole lot of users. Here in a second, I'll show you an example of one that has a lot more. But we can see our password policies. We can see our thresholds, our rule thresholds, less than 60, less than 80. These are the values that we populated. And then we can see down here what our values are for each user. So let's hop over and let's take a look at what it would look like for real in a real environment. Okay, so this is the report being run against a more live environment, and I'm blurring out the IDs. You guys don't need to see that, but I do want to point out and give you an idea of what this would look like in a real AWS environment with multiple users. And let's see who's got access. And this helps us flush out issues like if somebody may not have access to anything. Why are they still a user? It helps us to learn more about our environments that we may not have known about before. Here's our password policies, our rule thresholds, the MFA, is MFA enabled? In this case, this one has the only show actionable records. So there, in this case, like there's a lot more people than just what's shown for the keys. But since we're not wanting to see good records, we only want to see the ones that we need to look at. The reports will only have warnings and violations. Alright guys, and that is it. Let's take a look at our list one more time and make sure that we've got everything. Alright, so we have tested our Lambda and we have viewed our report. Alright, so let's take a look back at the scenario and let's make sure that we've actually met the requirements. Scenario, you're a developer at AIRL Incorporated and your company has recently undergone a third-party security audit of your AWS account. When your security officer got the results of the audit, they were shocked at how many security issues there were involving IAM users that came up. And looking through the audit report, you notice that a few users have been flagged as inactive who still had access. However, they no longer work at your company. You also notice most IAM users do not have MFA enabled, and most users, have not rotated their keys in a reasonable amount of time. Your security officer has tasked you with coming up with a solution for that. This is a solution that meets the needs that your security officer has talked about. So we are using the IAM credentials report to get information about the users in the account. We are able to use rules and apply rules based on thresholds that we have assigned, and we're able to check those and run those against our rules in a Lambda function. And then the Lambda function is able to send our data to an SES HTML template that we've provided and then email out to our users the report in an HTML format. What I recommend you guys do is change your cron to this, or for your reports. So you may want to have your report generate every Monday at noon, or you may want every Friday, or you may want every day. I would recommend, however, changing it from your 1 minute. That gets to be a bit intensive on your inbox, as my inbox is currently filling quite a bit. Well, thanks guys. I appreciate you sticking with me to the end, and I hope this has been helpful and educational, and I hope it helps you to branch out and kind of learn new services and learn new ways and think of new things, maybe outside of the box thinking for your own scenarios that you hit in your careers. Thanks, guys, and have a good one.